Saoirse Ronan was the one who kept the books clean until cops walked into her office and cuffed her for stealing hundreds of thousands from the company her husband ran. Every record pointed at her, and he stood behind them, looking devastated. If you've ever been blamed to cover someone else's mess, share what happened in the comments. The accounting clerk got arrested for allegedly embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from the company her own husband managed. Saoirse Ronan was still at her desk in Charlotte, North Carolina, finishing the end-of-day reconciliation the way she always did. Calculator, bank feed, printed ledger, one last pass to make sure the numbers landed where they were supposed to. The office had thinned out. The warehouse guys had already clocked out. A few fluorescent panels buzzed like they were tired of pretending this place was cheerful. The printer beside her kept spitting out reports, page after page, as if paperwork could insulate her from real life. A knock came at the glass. "Hey, Saoirse," the HR rep said, already half turned away. "Can you step into the small conference room for a minute?" Saoirse gathered her pen and her phone without thinking. HR never asked for a minute at 5:30 unless somebody was about to lose a badge. In the conference room, HR didn't sit. She stood near the wall with her hands clasped, eyes fixed on a corner of carpet like there was something fascinating down there. The printer sound carried through the thin walls. It felt wrong that it didn't stop. Two uniformed officers walked in like they'd done this 100 times here. "Saoirse Ronan?" one of them asked. "Yes," she said, because her name was still her name. He read from a sheet, steady and practiced. The other officer watched her hands. HR's face stayed angled away. "What is this about?" Saoirse asked. The first officer didn't answer right away. He nodded once, like he'd heard the question before and it never changed anything. Then Ethan Hale appeared in the doorway, last to arrive, breath a little too controlled, tie straight, the kind of stun that looked rehearsed. He paused where he could see everyone, and everyone could see him, as if he'd picked the spot earlier. "I just want everything to be transparent," Ethan said. Saoirse looked at him. He didn't look back for long. The officer held up a warrant and a thick packet stapled in the corner. "You're under arrest for embezzlement and wire fraud. We have a transaction summary showing transfers initiated from your accounting login." He flipped the pages so she could see the totals, the dates, the neat columns. Her name sat on the header like a brand. Ethan swallowed hard. "It was $287,000, he blurted. The officer glanced down, then back up. $285,412. Ethan's mouth stayed open for a second too long. Saoirse's laptop wasn't on her desk because IT had taken it yesterday for updates. She'd asked for it back twice. This morning, IT shrugged and told her there wasn't any update scheduled. She'd assumed someone missed a calendar invite. Now it landed differently. One officer asked HR for the camera footage from the hallway by accounting. HR cleared her throat. "Maintenance," she said. "They said it's been down since lunch." The cuffs were colder than she expected. The metal clicked, decisive. The printer kept running. At the property desk, a clerk slid a plastic bin toward her. "Occupation?" "Accountant," Saoirse said. He nodded like the universe had a sense of timing. "Yeah, today's on theme." An officer pushed bail paperwork across the counter. Monday, 8:30 a.m. Bolded. He tapped the line with his finger until she signed. Outside, the evening air hit her face. Ethan followed close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Just cooperate," he murmured, and the patrol car door started to swing shut, cutting off his voice mid-breath. At intake, they took Saoirse Ronan's shoelaces, belt, and the employee badge she'd worn all day. A deputy dropped everything into a plastic bag, wrote her name in block letters, and told her to face the wall for a photo. She did. The cuffs were gone, but the sense of being handled stuck. She waited on a bench while a TV murmured, then got moved again for processing. The holding area wasn't dramatic, just fluorescent and crowded with people avoiding eye contact. A woman asked what she was in for. Saoirse said, "Embezzlement," and the woman blinked like she'd misheard a weather report. Minutes later, a guard called her last name and led her to a phone. The number on the form was for the on-call public defender. The lawyer who answered sounded young and tired. "Don't talk to anyone but me," he said. "I haven't," Saoirse replied. He asked if she owned the company computer, if she had keys, if she'd ever moved money without approval. He spoke like he was filling blanks, not hearing a person. When he mentioned arraignment, Saoirse asked for one call. She scrolled her contacts, stopped on a name she'd saved from a payroll seminar, and hit dial. Marisol Vega picked up on the second ring. Her voice was steady, not sweet. "Tell me where you are," she said. Saoirse gave the address off the wall sign. "Good. Listen carefully," Marisol said. "Say nothing to detectives. Don't email your boss. Don't text coworkers to clear things up. Make a list tonight. Who has passwords? Who has your phone number for two-factor? Who has ever logged in to help? I'm coming down there." By the time Marisol arrived, the public defender had already disappeared into another case. She met Saoirse in a small interview room with a metal table and a guard posted outside. Marisol laid out papers, asked for her ID number, then leaned in like the next hour mattered more than feelings. "If they offer you a deal, you do not answer," she said. "We ask for discovery. We send a preservation letter to the company and the bank. Tomorrow morning, my office, 8 sharp." At the bail desk, Saoirse signed with a pen chained to the counter. The clerk pushed the form back when she hesitated at home address. Marisol watched her fill it in. "My address is still my husband's house," Saoirse said, flat as a receipt. "Saves the state gas when they come get me again." Marisol didn't smile, but she didn't correct her either. She checked the court date stamped in bold, Monday, 8:30 a.m., and tucked the copy into a folder. Her phone came back in her hands with 3 new notifications before she could even unlock it. HR. Administrative leave, effective immediately. The bank. Unusual activity review in progress. A group text from accounting was already spinning with questions she didn't answer. Marisol took the phone, turned off message previews, and handed it back. "Let them wonder," Marisol said. "It's safer than you explaining yourself into a confession." A deputy drove her to the house just long enough to grab a change of clothes, supervised like she might launder money through a laundry basket. The patrol car rolled past the same mailbox rows she'd walked for years. Porch lights clicked on as they pulled up. Neighbors watched from doorways, pretending they were only taking out trash. Saoirse kept her eyes on the deputy's clipboard and carried out a duffel without rushing. The deputy recited the conditions, and she nodded without meeting his eyes. In the jail parking lot, Ethan was there, as if he'd been circling until the timing looked sympathetic. He stepped forward with her gray coat draped over one arm. "Here," he said. Saoirse didn't reach for it. Ethan's face tightened. "I'm the one who got betrayed the most." Marisol arrived behind Saoirse and didn't bother lowering her voice. "Get in your car, Ethan," she said. "Anything you say to her is discoverable now, and you're not as clever as you think." Ethan opened his mouth again, then looked past them at the deputy and shut it. He walked away without the coat ever leaving his arm. Marisol guided Saoirse toward her own sedan, already talking about morning logistics, where to sit, what to bring, which emails to forward without adding commentary. 8 a.m., Marisol said. "We file for discovery and we demand they preserve every log they've got. Tonight you make that access list." Saoirse's phone buzzed again as they reached her driveway. Messages stacked faster than she could read. At the front door, her key turned but didn't catch. She tried once more, then looked down and saw the cylinder was new. She crossed to the garage keypad and started punching in the code. Ethan's SUV sat where it always did, angled just enough to block her old path to the door into the house. She didn't try the knob again. She grabbed the duffel she'd brought back from the jail, moved it to the passenger seat, and drove to Marisol Vega's office before the sun was fully up. She kept both hands on the wheel and ignored the urge to call anyone. Marisol's building was plain, a strip of suites with a brass directory and a coffee stain on the carpet that no one had bothered to hide. She waved Saoirse into a conference room and set a thin stack of papers on the table like it weighed more than it looked. "This is the criminal complaint," Marisol said. Saoirse scanned the first page. Her name was printed in the same font the company used on invoices, which felt like a personal insult. They're saying the transfers happened while you were logged in, Marisol said. Not that you were near a computer, Marisol said. Logged in, Marisol said. Marisol slid over the timeline the detective had attached. The biggest transfer sat in a narrow window, 4:58 p.m. to 5:06 p.m., right when HR had pulled her into that little room and started avoiding her eyes. Saoirse opened her phone and didn't narrate her feelings. She pulled up her calendar, then her parking app, then the time clock portal she still had access to for the moment. She placed each screenshot in a row and turned the screen toward Marisol. At 4:55, she'd badged into HR. At 5:07, she'd badged out. The parking receipt showed her car hadn't moved. The time clock showed she was still on the clock, in the building, exactly where she'd been told to sit and wait. Marisol nodded once, like she'd been waiting for Saoirse to prove she wasn't floating through her own life. Good, Marisol said. Now we make them explain the gap, Marisol said. She flipped to a page labeled Transaction Details. A line near the bottom was easy to miss. Trusted device. Beneath it, smaller text listed a browser string and an operating system. Marisol tapped it with her pen. Do you know what this says? She asked. Saoirse leaned forward. Her company laptop was a Windows machine that fought updates like it was allergic to them. This line referenced Mac OS and Safari. Not her setup. Not even close. That's not my computer, Saoirse said. Then whose is it? Marisol asked. Saoirse scrolled through the settings on her phone, checked the device list tied to her work email. 2 devices were listed, her phone and her laptop, marked last seen yesterday, right before IT took it for updates. Marisol watched her hands instead of her face. Think habits, Marisol said. Has anyone ever asked you for the code that texts your phone? Marisol said. Has anyone said, just read it to me, it's faster, Marisol said. Saoirse didn't argue. She pulled up her text history and stopped at a thread with Ethan from months ago. Send me the 6-digit, he'd written. Payroll's stuck, he'd written. She hadn't questioned it then. She'd sent it. More than once. Marisol didn't scold. She wrote Ethan's name on a legal pad and underlined it hard enough to crease the paper. We're going to the bank, Marisol said. I want the IP address for the login, Marisol said. The branch manager recognized Marisol, which didn't make Saoirse feel better. They were led to a fraud specialist with a headset and a practiced smile. He offered water. He didn't offer answers. We can't release IP logs without a subpoena, he said. Marisol kept her voice even. She's facing felony charges, Marisol said. You have the audit trail, Marisol said. I'm asking for cooperation, Marisol said. I'm sorry, he replied. Policy, he replied. Saoirse watched his cursor hover over a screen he wouldn't turn. The distance between cooperation and policy was the width of a desk. Marisol took the refusal letter, glanced at it, and tucked it into her folder. Good news, Marisol said. They don't hate you, Marisol said. They hate everyone equally, Marisol said. Outside the bank, a man from accounting, someone Saoirse had trained last year, walked toward the ATM, saw her, and pivoted like he'd forgotten something urgent in his car. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed Ethan's mother. Saoirse let it ring until it stopped. Back at the branch desk, Marisol filled out forms for an emergency motion. Saoirse signed where she was told, ink still smudging on her fingertips from the last signature. Marisol's laptop chimed. She read the email, snapped it shut, and grabbed her coat. Emergency hearing, she said. Today? Saoirse asked. Now, Marisol said. Saoirse stood and reached for the pen again as Marisol held the folder open and said, Go. Subpoena hearing set for this afternoon, Marisol said. They'll notify the bank. That buys us a crack in the door. Saoirse nodded and followed instructions like she was back at work, except her hand still carried faint pen stains, and the world treated her like a contagion. Marisol handed her a short checklist. Go home and grab anything you can that shows your normal workflow, payroll approvals, prior reconciliations, your employment contract. Do not argue with Ethan. If he starts performing, you leave. The word performing landed hard, but Saoirse didn't stop. She drove to the house in the suburbs with the same route she'd taken 1,000 times, parked at the curb, and used her key again even though she already knew it wouldn't work. The lock had been replaced. Ethan had chosen a shiny new deadbolt, like a fresh start for him. He opened the door before she knocked, as if he'd been waiting behind it. "I changed it for safety," he said. On the dining table sat a binder and a neat stack of papers, centered like a holiday centerpiece. The top page had a title in bold, Restitution and Plea Agreement. Ethan pulled out a chair. "Sit," he said. "This is the best way through it." Saoirse stayed standing. She set her purse down and looked for the file cabinet where she kept household records. Ethan slid the binder closer, the plastic cover squeaking. "They'll go easy if you repay," he said. "We can call it a mistake. Stress. You had access. You got overwhelmed." Saoirse didn't raise her voice. "Show me the original statements," she said. "Not summaries. The bank statements. The audit trail." Ethan's eyes sharpened, then softened again, like a switch flipped by habit. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "I'm trying to protect us." "You're making me the villain." He reached for her phone when it buzzed on the table. She moved it toward herself, but he caught it first and turned the screen away. "Let me hold on to it," Ethan said. "You're not thinking straight. You'll text someone and it'll get twisted." "I'm keeping you from making it worse." Saoirse held out her hand. "Give it back," she said. Ethan didn't. "Sign the papers," he said, lowering his voice. "If you don't, I can't stop what happens next. They'll take your license. You'll never work in finance again. And the house," he added, like it was a separate tragedy. "You'll have nothing." Saoirse grabbed the folder she'd come for, tax returns, insurance, anything with dates, and walked out without her phone. Ethan followed her to the driveway, still talking. "You can't fight numbers, Saoirse," he called. "They're not emotional." At 10 o'clock, HR emailed her from a generic address and demanded she come in for administrative finalization. Marisol told her to go, not alone. A security guard met them at the entrance and escorted them to the same small conference room as the arrest, as if the building only had one place to ruin a person. A laptop sat on the table with an IT sticker. Saoirse recognized it. It was hers. "We're collecting company property," the HR rep said. "Access is being revoked effective immediately. Email, accounting platform, shared drives." "And per counsel," she added, eyes drifting to Marisol, "the company will cooperate fully with law enforcement." Saoirse asked one question. "Where's the update ticket for my laptop?" The IT guy shifted. "There wasn't an update," he said. "It got pulled because management requested it." HR cleared her throat. "That's not relevant." The IT guy kept talking anyway, like his mouth didn't get the memo. "Also, the admin account was reset last week at management's request." He didn't name Ethan. He didn't need to. His eyes flicked toward the doorway where Ethan stood pretending he'd just arrived. He held his palms out, wounded. "I told them to tighten controls," Ethan said. "After what you did, we had to." The security guard slid Saoirse's badge across the table like a tip. "Turn this in," he said. Saoirse picked it up, weighed the plastic, then set it down next to the revocation form. "At least you're giving me a thinner wallet," she said. Back at the house, Ethan had reset the stage. The binder waited on the dining table again, pen placed perfectly across the signature line. He pulled the chair closer with his foot and nudged the pen toward her fingers. "Just sign," he said. "Be reasonable." He angled the page so her signature line was already highlighted, as if paperwork could pin her down. His thumb pressed her knuckles, steady, proprietary for once. Saoirse started to pull her hand away when the landline rang, and Marisol's voice came through the speaker as Ethan's grip tightened. Marisol's voice came through the landline speaker before Ethan could push the pen into Saoirse's fingers again. "Let her go, Ethan." Saoirse pulled her hand back and stood. Ethan kept the binder planted on the table, his palm flat over the signature line like he owned it. "She needs to sign," he said. "She's not thinking." Marisol sounded unimpressed. "Put the pen down." "Back off or I call the deputy who wrote her bond paperwork." Ethan's face tightened. He set the pen down with a slow tap, and lifted his hands, offended by the idea he could be the problem. "Fine," he said. "Go worship your lawyer." Saoirse walked out without her phone. She drove on muscle memory, called Marisol through the car's screen, and followed directions to the county courthouse. Marisol met her at the entrance with a folder and no small talk. "We're getting the logs," she said, "and we're doing it fast." A judge heard them that morning in a short hearing that felt like a scheduling dispute, not a felony case. Marisol asked for a subpoena to the bank and the payment processor for the audit trail and login metadata. The prosecutor objected out of habit. The judge glanced at the complaint, then signed. "Limited scope," he said. "Produce within 72 hours. In the hallway, Marisol pointed at the court stamp. "That's our window," she said. "They will offer you a plea before you can blink." Somewhere in that building, Ethan was practicing his sad face for the next hearing. Back at her office, she called a forensic auditor named Denise Holt and had Saoirse sign authorizations without commentary. Denise arrived with a laptop, a portable scanner, and the kind of patience that comes from dealing with spreadsheets, not stories. When the bank packet hit Marisol's inbox, Denise printed only what mattered. She slid 2 pages across the desk. One was a transaction list. The other was the login log, lined up with timestamps and fields Saoirse recognized from her own work. Account ID, session start, trusted device, user agent, IP address. Denise tapped the bolded entry. "This is the login that initiated the transfer," she said. The trusted device line didn't match Saoirse's company laptop model. The user agent read Safari on Mac OS. Saoirse didn't need an expert to tell her that wasn't the machine IT had updated. Then she saw the IP. It wasn't the company network range. It wasn't the bank branch. It wasn't the office. The geolocation landed in the same residential block as her house, under the same internet provider Ethan had switched them to because it was a better deal. Marisol watched Saoirse's eyes move across the numbers. "Have you ever used that network to access payroll?" Marisol asked. "No," Saoirse said. "We're blocked from off-site access." A few earlier coincidences shifted into alignment without anyone naming them. The hallway camera down at the exact hour, her laptop disappearing the day before, the IT guy mentioning an admin reset and looking toward the doorway where Ethan liked to stand. Marisol didn't reach for the paper like it belonged to her. She pushed a legal pad toward Saoirse. "Build the timeline," she said. "Every date they cite, where you were, where he was, what you can prove." Saoirse opened her wallet and started pulling receipts, not as a performance, but as inventory. Gas, groceries, a parking stub from the day HR called her into that room, a text thread where Ethan had asked for a 6-digit code just this once. Denise scanned and labeled. Marisol wrote in block letters. "Here's what happens next," Marisol said. "They offer you probation if you plead, restitution, no trial, a clean exit, except it isn't clean." Saoirse held a gas receipt between her fingers, the date matching the biggest transfer. For a second, she pictured how easy it would be to stop showing up to courtrooms and bank desks. Then she set the receipt down and kept sorting. "Or we push to trial," Marisol continued. "It costs money. He'll go after the house. He'll try to paint you as unstable. You'll get dragged." Saoirse looked at the words IP address on the printout. "I used to think numbers just balanced books," she said. "Turns out they balance men, too." Marisol's mouth twitched. "If you want your name clean, you'll have to tolerate being dirty a bit longer," she said. "And we file a preservation order on the company servers today." She slid over the motion and a request to expand the investigation beyond the bank logs. Saoirse signed where the tabs pointed, ink smearing on her fingertip. Marisol's phone lit up with an unknown number. She hit speaker without hesitating. "Vega," she said, while Saoirse kept the pen poised over the last line as the call connected. Marisol held the phone between her shoulder and ear, speaker on, while Saoirse kept the pen hovering above the last signature block. "Ms. Vega?" a man's voice asked. "Who is this?" Marisol said. "Clerk's office. Judge Hart signed the preservation order in part. You can pick up the stamped copy this afternoon. Marisol's eyes met Saoirse's. She nodded once, all business. Email it to me, Marisol said, and confirmed the bank subpoena return is due Friday. Friday at noon, the clerk replied. The call ended. Marisol slid the signed motion into a folder and snapped a tab shut. We got a foothold, she said, not the whole hill. The order didn't reach personal devices or private email, only the company's systems and anything the bank controlled. Marisol marked the gaps with tabs and told Saoirse to collect her own records before Ethan could make them vanish. She drafted the preservation letter on the spot, addressed to the company's counsel and copied to IT. She read it aloud as she typed, like she wanted every verb to carry weight. Preserve all server logs, access records, authentication events, and backup images, she said. No deletion, no overwrites. Saoirse watched the cursor move. She didn't thank Marisol. She pulled her notebook closer and wrote times and dates with the same pen she'd used on court forms. By mid-afternoon, a deputy met them at the house for a supervised pickup. Ethan opened the door before they reached the porch, wearing a soft expression that didn't reach his eyes. She's only here for personal items, the deputy said. Of course, Ethan replied. I just want her safe. Saoirse walked past him and went to the hall closet where they kept old electronics. Ethan trailed a step behind, careful to stay within the deputy's view. Take what you need, he said, but don't take anything that belongs to the company. She pulled out a shoebox labeled Cables and found a cracked iPhone she'd replaced 2 years ago. A USB drive sat taped to the lid. She recognized her own handwriting. Backup. Ethan's voice floated from the kitchen. We can still fix this. You just have to cooperate. Saoirse didn't answer. She set the phone and USB in her tote, gathered a folder of tax documents, and left without looking at the binder on the dining table. Back at Marisol's office, Saoirse worked through the evidence like it was inventory for an audit. She photographed each label, captured each screen, and wrote the exact time for every file she saved. Denise Holt showed her how to hash the copies, then stepped back and let Saoirse keep going. Marisol returned from the courthouse with the stamped order and set it down like a paperweight. Pretrial conference is coming fast, Marisol said. We have a few days to force their system logs into daylight. Saoirse nodded and kept typing. The old phone wouldn't power on. Denise suggested a repair shop that handled data recovery without asking a lot of questions. Saoirse drove there with Marisol's card in her wallet and the ankle monitor band still itching at her sock line. A technician with grease under his nails took the phone and the USB. You got a passcode? He asked. I do, Saoirse said. He plugged the phone into a bench device and waited. 10 minutes later, the screen lit. You're lucky, he said. Battery's shot, but the storage is fine. Saoirse entered the passcode. The phone opened to an email app she hadn't used since she still believed shared passwords were a sign of trust. She searched Ethan's name and found a thread with IT. Request, add manager access. Request, move two-factor to manager device for continuity. Approved. She copied the messages to the USB and asked the technician to print the headers. He did, no comments, just stapled paper. As she paid, her current phone buzzed with a security alert. New login to cloud storage. Device unknown. She showed the screen to the technician. Is that bad? He asked. If someone wants to live my life, Saoirse said, they can at least cover my bail. He gave a short nod, like that made sense, and handed her the receipt. On the way back, she stopped at a grocery store because Marisol had told her to keep routines normal when she could. She bought coffee pods and a loaf of bread, paid with a card that still worked, and carried the bag to her car. A plain white envelope was tucked under her windshield wiper. No name, no stamp, just paper against glass. Saoirse froze at the sound of the car door slamming. She didn't turn around right away. Her fingers kept hold of the envelope, and her keys stayed wedged between her knuckles. A man walked past her cart return, head down, phone to his ear. Another shopper tossed a bag of ice into a trunk. The slam could have been anyone, but it landed like a message. She looked over her shoulder. A gray sedan had parked one space over. The driver got out, glanced at her, then kept walking toward the store with a reusable bag. No stare, no rush, no confrontation. Just movement. Saoirse pulled the envelope free and slid into the driver's seat. She locked the doors before she opened it. The paper rustled once, crisp and deliberate. There were 2 printed screenshots of bank transfers and a narrow strip of notebook paper. The handwriting was blocky, like someone trying not to be recognized. It read, "Take the plea before Friday and this stays calm." She didn't read it twice. She didn't need to. Friday. That matched the subpoena return deadline Marisol had just confirmed. Saoirse laid the screenshots on her lap and scanned for what was wrong, not for what was loud. The totals looked familiar. The dates were the same ones the detective had waved at her. But in the memo field, a line she would have left blank, there was a short string of characters. N0X-47, followed by a wallet address. She had never used anything like that for internal transfers. She stuffed the papers back into the envelope and checked her car. The driver's mirror angled outward, not how she left it. Her seat sat 1 notch farther back, enough that her knees didn't line up with the pedals. Nothing missing, no broken glass, no glove box dumped. It felt like someone had tried on her day and put it back. Saoirse started the engine and drove to Marisol's office without stopping at home. She kept the envelope on the passenger seat, weighed down by the bread she no longer wanted. Marisol was on a call when Saoirse walked in. She motioned to a chair without pausing, listened for 3 seconds, then ended the call. "Show me," Marisol said. Saoirse set the envelope on the desk and opened it flat. She didn't explain the parking lot. She didn't describe the slam. She just pointed to the note. Marisol read it, then read the memo string on the screenshot. Her face didn't change, but her hand reached for her laptop. "This is coercion," she said, "and it's sloppy." "Sloppy?" Saoirse asked. "They left you a paper trail," Marisol said. "People who feel safe don't do that." Saoirse's phone buzzed in her bag. She pulled it out. Ethan. Marisol held out her hand. "Speaker," she said. Saoirse answered. "Hey," Ethan said, warm and careful. "I heard you've been running around all day." "Don't do that," Marisol said. "If you're calling to threaten her, do it clearly." Ethan let out a short laugh. "Threaten? No. I'm trying to help her not get buried." "By Friday?" Marisol asked. A pause. Not long, but real. "She doesn't need this turning into a circus," Ethan said. "If she just accepts what they offer, everyone can move on." Saoirse watched Marisol write Friday in the margin and underline it. "Interesting you know the schedule," Marisol said. "We haven't shared it with you." Ethan sighed, offended. "It's not a secret. I'm worried about her. Don't let a lawyer make this bigger." Marisol ended the call without saying goodbye. She set the phone down and looked at Saoirse. "He's playing good husband with a court calendar," Marisol said. "Creative." She opened a new document and started typing. Her fingers didn't slow. "We treat this as witness intimidation," she said. "We ask for updated bond terms. We ask the state to preserve their own communications." Saoirse pulled her notebook closer and rewrote the timeline with the new detail. Envelope, memo string, Friday. She kept her handwriting legible, like someone might read it in a room full of strangers. Marisol's laptop chimed again. She glanced at the screen, then stood. "We're not waiting," she said. "We file tonight." Saoirse signed the bottom of the draft motion where Marisol pointed, then started another page of notes. The door swung open before she could finish the next line, and a court employee stepped in holding a thick envelope of stamped papers, saying, "Ms. Vega?" While Saoirse kept her pen moving, watching the papers approach the edge of the desk too fast. The court employee set the thick envelope on Marisol's desk and waited while she checked the stamp. Saoirse kept her pen moving, finishing the last line of her timeline without looking up. Marisol flipped through the pages, signed a receipt, and slid the packet towards Saoirse. Inside the packet was the court's response to Marisol's intimidation motion and an updated notice for the bank subpoena. Marisol read it once, then stood. "Grab your bag," she said. "We're filing this in person." They drove back to the courthouse, parked in the first open spot, and walked through security with the same folder clutched between them. Marisol handed the clerk the papers and asked for a time-stamped copy. The clerk slid it back under the glass, impersonal and fast. By noon, the bank's fraud desk had complied, sending a larger audit trail than the first one. More fields, more sessions, more transfers that weren't on the detective's neat summary. Denise Holt met them at the forensics lab with a fresh pot of coffee and a monitor already split into columns. She imported the new file and sorted by destination accounts. The screen filled with small withdrawals, then bigger ones, then a pattern that made Saoirse's jaw tighten. Money leaving the company, landing in a personal-looking account, then hopping again into a second account, and a third, like someone tossing a hot pan hand to hand. Marisol leaned in and pointed at the earliest date. It was months before the day two officers said Saoirse's name in that conference room. Denise highlighted a run of transfers that happened late at night, twice a week, then 3 times a week, as if the thief got comfortable. Next to several entries was the same trusted device tag, macOS, Safari, and the same neighborhood IP range. Ethan's errands, Ethan's working late, Ethan's steady patience, all translated into numbers. Saoirse pulled up her own notes and matched them against the dates. The day her laptop vanished for updates lined up with the week the transfers jumped. The afternoon the hallway camera went down was the same afternoon the largest amount moved. The admin reset the IT guy mentioned landed on a Thursday when Ethan had texted, "Don't wait up," and shown up home after midnight. Nothing had been random. It had just been filed under normal life. Denise built a chart that traced the hops, and the lines braided into a loop that always came back to the same cluster of accounts. Some were under names Saoirse didn't recognize. Some were masked by payment services with generic labels. Marisol didn't celebrate. She printed the chart, stapled it, and set it beside the complaint like she was building a case against gravity. "This helps," Marisol said. "It proves a pattern," Denise said. "It also proves someone knew what they were doing," Marisol replied. Saoirse watched the graph grow and kept her hands flat on the table, steadying the paper as if it might slide away. "I thought he was only good at gaslighting," she said. "Turns out he's also good at spreadsheets." Denise didn't laugh, but she saved the file under a name that wouldn't get lost. Marisol zoomed in on one set of entries where the memo field carried a short tag, the same one from the envelope, N0X-47. Next to it, a device fingerprint appeared that didn't look like a normal office login. It looked like someone had routed it. Marisol slid a small prepaid phone across the table, still in its plastic sleeve. "Your cloud account is getting probed," she said. "And someone left you paper in a parking lot. We stopped using anything Ethan could touch." Saoirse peeled the plastic, powered it on, and wrote the new number on her timeline sheet. Denise printed the log page with the tag circled in red. A second circle sat around an outbound connection labeled Support Session, the kind of entry that meant a remote tool had been used. Marisol's pen hovered over it. "If there's a third party," Denise said, "this is where they step in." Marisol nodded, then tapped the tag again. "We're not guessing anymore," Marisol said. "We call this route." She tore off a sticky note, wrote the handle and an encrypted contact address Denise had pulled from the metadata, and placed it next to Saoirse's hand. Saoirse didn't ask what kind of person answered those messages. She simply entered the digits one at a time into the burner phone. The first ring sounded ordinary, almost polite. Marisol leaned closer, ready to speak first, and Saoirse held the phone steady as the call connected. A click, then breath. Saoirse watched Marisol raise a finger for silence. Her other hand slid over the printed log covering Ethan's name as a voice finally spoke on the line, low. The voice on the burner phone was low and flat. Marisol held up the printed log and spoke first. "You're Noah Carver?" A pause, then the same voice. "I don't know who you are." The line went dead. Marisol didn't redial from her office. She grabbed her keys, nodded at Saoirse, and walked them out. "We call again somewhere public." No law firm number on a screen, no home address in the background. They drove 2 blocks to a crowded coffee shop near the courthouse. Saoirse ordered drip coffee because it was fast and required no conversation. Marisol chose a table within earshot of the espresso machine and dialed the handle again. It rang once. Listen. You told someone to move money through 3 intermediaries on March 12th, right after the admin reset. That reset was requested by Ethan Hale at 9:14 p.m. Marisol didn't raise her voice. If you don't know us, you can still know we're looking at the right doorway. Silence stretched long enough for Saoirse to hear someone arguing about oat milk. Then the call ended, not with a click this time, but with a blunt disconnect. Saoirse watched Marisol's thumb hover over redial, then stop. A new email hit Marisol's phone from the district attorney's office. Plea offer, 48 hours, or they'd add additional counts. They're trying to scare you into signing before we get the rest of the logs. Saoirse took the envelope from her bag, slid the screenshots toward Marisol, and pointed at the memo string again. She didn't ask for comfort. She asked for a plan. We keep the pressure legal. No side deals, no threats, no chasing him in the dark. Marisol typed a short message to the contact address, offering a meeting through counsel and spelling out cooperation. She attached the court order number and her bar information. If he wants protection, he does it the grown-up way. Saoirse's own phone, the one Ethan had tried to confiscate, vibrated with a message from a family law attorney. Ethan had filed to separate assets and take control of the house during the case. The attachment was a proposed temporary order and a hearing date. Saoirse's hand paused over her coffee. Marisol read it, then slid it back without comment. He's tightening the screws from every angle. For a moment, Saoirse pictured the easy version of this week. Sign, apologize, repay money she never touched, and go back to work with a permanent stain. The alternative was slower and uglier, and it might cost her the house, but it would keep her name usable. She set the attorney's email face down and opened Marisol's refusal form. I'm an accountant. I don't sign the wrong number. Marisol filed the plea rejection electronically, then forwarded a confirmation to the prosecutor. A minute later, an encrypted message appeared on the burner phone. A link and 3 words. Stop calling me. Marisol didn't touch the link. She wrote back with 2 sentences, formal as a contract. This is Marisol Vega, counsel for Saoirse Ronan. If you want to talk, we can arrange lawful cooperation and document your evidence chain. The reply came quickly, not as a call, but as a text with a name. Noah. People call me Knox. Marisol stared at the screen, then typed a time and place for a meeting through her office, and asked for proof he could deliver. Saoirse gathered the printed charts, stacked them neatly, and followed Marisol back toward the courthouse for a bond update hearing. In the parking lot, Marisol sent the meeting confirmation, then tucked the burner phone into her briefcase. Do not mention him to anyone without me. Saoirse walked up to the courthouse doors and stepped into the security line. She placed her bag on the conveyor and held her hands out for the wand. The guard scanned her ID, frowned, and checked his screen again. Ma'am, step aside. Marisol turned back, already reaching for her folder. What's the issue? The guard pointed at a printed notice clipped to a clipboard. Your conditions were modified this morning. He slid the paper towards Saoirse without looking her in the eye. The heading read, Bond Amendment, and Ethan's name wasn't on it, but his fingerprints were. It prohibited computer access except for approved legal communication, required additional reporting, and warned that any contact with unknown parties could be treated as a violation. Saoirse read the line twice, then looked at Marisol. They did this for the plea clock. Marisol took the paper and wrote a note on the back, quick and sharp. We can work with it. But we're not walking away. The guard held up his hand, waiting for Saoirse to sign acknowledgement before he'd let her pass. She picked up the pen, and Marisol leaned closer. Saoirse signed the bond amendment at the security desk while Marisol watched the guard's clipboard. The guard stamped the page and waved them through, but not before repeating, like a script, that violations meant jail. Marisol kept walking, already reading the next notice. They reached a smaller courtroom where a docket of quick hearings moved like traffic. Saoirse sat beside Marisol at the defense table, hands folded, ankle still bare. Across the aisle, the prosecutor arranged papers and didn't look at her, like that counted today. The judge called the case, then nodded at the prosecutor. "Your Honor, the defendant poses a risk to the integrity of evidence," the prosecutor said. He talked about deleted files, cloud logins, and how financial cases depended on records that could vanish with a click. He said the company's systems had already shown irregular activity after the arrest. Saoirse kept her face still and watched his hands. He asked for stricter conditions, no computers, no financial accounts, and a travel radius small enough to make her world shrink. Marisol rose before he finished. She raised the court order and spoke. Marisol reminded the judge that Saoirse had complied since release, then pointed to the bank subpoena and the court's own order to preserve data. "These restrictions will cripple her ability to assist counsel," she said. The prosecutor countered that assistance looked like manipulation. The side door opened, and Ethan walked in with a folder hugged to his chest. He sat behind the state, close enough to be seen, far enough to look powerless. When the judge asked if any victim wished to speak, Ethan stood and offered a document. "I have something relevant," he said. Marisol stayed upright and silent. Ethan handed the paper to the bailiff, then looked toward Saoirse as if sharing grief. "This is an authorization she signed," he said. "It let me handle transfers when she was overwhelmed." The page showed Saoirse's name in her usual slant, but the last letter hooked wrong, like a copied habit. The prosecutor called it corroboration that Ethan had access with consent. Marisol objected and asked for foundation, but the judge allowed it as a bond consideration. Ethan added, softly, "She used to text me her verification codes." "I was helping!" Saoirse heard her own convenience turned into a rope. The judge leaned back and spoke without drama. "Given the allegations and the recent attempts at contact, conditions will be modified," he said. He barred Saoirse from accessing financial platforms and limited computer use to communication approved by counsel. He set a curfew, restricted travel to Mecklenburg County except for court and legal meetings, and warned that any unknown party contact could be treated as interference. Marisol asked for an exception for employment, and the judge declined. "You are not to manage any accounts," he said. He then ordered an ankle monitor fitted before she left the building that day. A deputy led Saoirse to a side office and measured the band around her leg with brisk efficiency. Marisol waited by the door, flipping through the new paperwork. The deputy tightened the strap, checked the clasp, and wrote down the serial number. "Try not to get it wet," he said. Saoirse looked at the monitor as if it were another piece of company property she'd been forced to surrender. "I've never trained for running," she murmured. "Now I'm not allowed to." Marisol glanced at her, then kept reading, already adjusting their plan around smaller circles. They returned to the hallway. In the corridor outside the courtroom, Ethan waited near a vending machine like he belonged there. He stepped into Saoirse's path with careful timing, blocking without touching. "Are you okay?" he asked. "It's a lot." Marisol moved between them. "Don't speak to her," she said. Ethan kept his voice gentle. "I'm not the enemy," he said. "I'm trying to keep her from making a bigger mistake." Saoirse watched his eyes slide to her ankle, then back up. "You don't have to do this the hard way," Ethan added. His smile held pity, and the threat sat right behind it, waiting. Marisol caught Saoirse's elbow and turned her toward the exit before Ethan could move closer. "Don't look at him," Marisol said. Ethan followed 2 steps, still soft. "Friday is coming fast," he said. "You can end this." Marisol walked Saoirse to her car and didn't comment on the ankle monitor, just checked her phone and drove. 10 minutes later, her email pinged with a message from the company's counsel. "System outage. Accounting logs may be incomplete." Marisol read it twice, then said, "They're moving fast." She took Saoirse straight to the office park, flashing the preservation order at reception. A security guard escorted them past cubicles that used to nod hello. Saoirse kept her gaze forward, feeling the strap at her sock with every step. The HR rep who smiled at payroll now stared at her shoes. In the IT corridor, a young technician met them with a badge lanyard and a nervous swallow. "I can show you what we have." He unlocked the server closet and gestured at a rack of blinking lights. Marisol asked for authentication logs and backup images. The technician pulled up a dashboard, then frowned. "We had a corruption event last night." "What does that mean?" Marisol asked. "It means the audit tables aren't complete." Saoirse watched his mouse hover over gray boxes labeled unavailable, the same word repeating like a shrug. The last timestamp ended an hour before her arrest there. Denise arrived with her own laptop and a court-stamped letter, and the technician's shoulders loosened as if authority had a uniform. "Pull the transaction logs from the backup volume," Denise said. He tried, failed, tried again. Denise ran a quick integrity check and pointed at a gap. "This isn't a crash," she said. Marisol leaned closer. "Spoliation?" Denise nodded. "Someone purged the audit trail and forced a partial rebuild." The deletion window lined up with Ethan's claim he was out with a client. Saoirse didn't speak, just wrote the time down. No ticket number appeared. The technician shook his head. Back at Marisol's office, the prosecutor's email arrived like it had been waiting. A revised plea, harsher language, the same 48-hour clock. Marisol printed it and slid it across the table. "They think the missing logs prove you did it," she said. Denise forwarded her spoliation notes, but the state wanted originals that no longer existed. Saoirse checked her banking app and got a banner, "Account under review." Her card declined when she tried to pay Denise's deposit. Marisol didn't sugarcoat it. "My retainer is bleeding," she said. "If we don't get a breakthrough, I may have to step back." A second email hit, this one from a family law attorney with Ethan's signature block at the bottom. It demanded Saoirse vacate the house by the weekend and warned the locks would be changed again for safety. Marisol forwarded it to her own family law contact, then told Saoirse to start thinking about a temporary place. Saoirse texted a friend from church, asking for a couch for 2 nights. The read receipt appeared, then nothing else. In the office lobby, a former coworker pretended to be on a call and walked past her. Receptionist whispered her name, then stared at the monitor. That night, Saoirse moved into a short-term rental Marisol's assistant found, paid with the assistant's card, and a promise to reimburse later. The unit had a key code and bare furniture, which was easier than watching Ethan's porch light. Saoirse unpacked only what she needed: documents, chargers, the old phone, the USB, and 2 shirts. She plugged in her regular phone and watched another alert pop up, then cleared it without opening. Her company group chat kept buzzing with half-sentences and emoji reactions that stopped when she joined the thread. She set the monitor charger by the bed, uninvited, always. Denise emailed a final note near midnight. The system reported log unavailable for the critical window, and the backup image had been overwritten after the preservation letter was sent. Marisol replied with a single line, asking for a sworn declaration. Saoirse opened the attachment, scanned the technical language, and marked the timestamp that matched Ethan's client dinner. She didn't call him. She didn't message coworkers. She just wrote another line on her paper timeline. "Terrific," she said to the empty room. "Even computers can learn selective amnesia." Her phone buzzed with a blocked number, and she let it ring out. Marisol called at 6:15 a.m. "Don't use your regular phone," she said. "I'm sending the details to the burner." Saoirse opened the prepaid screen and saw a new encrypted text, short and blunt. "He made me erase it," it read. "I kept something else." Below it was a set of GPS coordinates and a time. Marisol's next message followed. "We go together," she wrote. "We do this clean." Saoirse met Marisol in the courthouse lot just after sunrise. The ankle monitor felt heavier under her sock, but she walked anyway, carrying the folder Denise had labeled with dates and hashes. Marisol checked her watch and started a voice memo on her own phone, stating the time, location, and who was present, like she was reading the opening of a deposition. They drove to the coordinates Knox had sent, a public parking deck near a busy library. Marisol parked by a security camera and chose a space close to the stairwell. She sent a text to the burner. "We're here. Confirm you're alone." Saoirse kept her hands visible on her lap, watching pedestrians move past without looking. Marisol had brought her paralegal Tessa and parked Tessa's car across the deck as a second set of eyes. She photographed the license plates around them, then read Saoirse's bond limits out loud into the memo. Approved contacts, approved devices, approved routes. It sounded ridiculous, but it kept them clean. A man in a hoodie approached, not running, not hiding. He stopped 3 cars away and raised 2 fingers in a quick, cautious signal. Marisol stepped out first, badge clipped to her belt, and held up a business card. Marisol Vega, she said. Counsel. The man's eyes flicked to Saoirse's ankle, then to the folder, then away. You called me Knox, he said. That's what the log says, Marisol replied. I didn't say I wanted to meet, he said. You texted coordinates, Marisol said. Because he's getting sloppy, Knox said. Marisol pointed at a nearby bench and kept her distance. She started a second recording, then asked his full legal name. Noah Carver, he said. Spell it, Marisol said. He did. She repeated it back, then asked, Are you represented? No, Noah said. Then you don't confess to anything today, Marisol said. You deliver evidence, nothing else. Noah handed over a small drive sealed in an anti-static bag and a printed packet stapled at the corner. I deleted what he paid me to delete, he said, but I logged every session for my own protection. Saoirse watched his hands as he pointed to the header, remote access tool, session ID, command history, timestamps, device fingerprint, and IP address. Ethan's home network appeared again, along with a second IP that matched the company's guest Wi-Fi. Noah didn't offer a laptop, only evidence he could surrender without getting trapped. He said Ethan had found him through an encrypted marketplace and paid him to make the trail disappear. Noah had agreed, then started recording every click because clients loved blaming the person they hired. He pointed to the same handle Saoirse had seen in the envelope, N0X-47, and shrugged. It's not a nickname. It's a label I use so I can prove what session was whose. Marisol didn't touch the bag with bare hands. She pulled on gloves, photographed the seal, and wrote the serial number on a chain of custody form. Saoirse offered her own gas receipts and calendar printouts without commentary. Marisol aligned Noah's timestamps with Saoirse's documented movements, matching a transfer command to the minute Saoirse had been sitting in HR, matching a cleanup command to the hour Ethan claimed he was at dinner. Noah looked at the spread of paper and paused. You're the only one in this story who kept records, he said. Saoirse met his eyes for a beat. Bad habit, she said. Marisol slid the chain of custody form toward him. Sign that you delivered it to counsel today, she said. He signed, then backed away like he expected handcuffs to appear. Back at Marisol's office, Denise verified the hashes and opened the log in read-only mode. The command history read like a blunt conversation. Initiate transfer, confirm, clear trace, wipe audit table. A line showed Ethan asking, Can you make it look like her login? And Noah replying, Yes, if you stop reusing passwords. Marisol printed that page and placed it on top of the spoliation motion. The prosecutor called within an hour. We're withdrawing the plea offer for now, he said. We need to review new materials. Marisol didn't gloat. Put it in writing, she said. She filed a motion for sanctions on the missing company logs and a request to compel testimony from IT and a digital forensics expert. Her inbox updated with a new setting notice. A status hearing moved up and a trial date penciled in. Marisol printed the witness list, adding Noah's name under subpoena and Denise under expert. She circled Ethan's name in the margin, then slid the clipboard to Saoirse without asking permission or leaving blanks. Saoirse signed the witness list where Marisol pointed, her pen moving steady as Marisol said, We bring him into the light. And the ink dried under Saoirse's thumb. By the time Saoirse Ronan walked into courtroom 4B, the Anka monitor was snug under her slacks, and every step reminded her the state still owned a piece of her schedule. Marisol Vega carried 2 binders and a sealed evidence bag. Denise Holt sat behind them with a yellow legal pad, ready to testify if the judge allowed it. The prosecutor began as if nothing had shifted. Ms. Ronan had exclusive access to the accounting platform. Funds moved from the company account into accounts she controlled. After her arrest, system logs became incomplete consistent with tampering. He held up printed summaries, the same columns that had gotten her handcuffed at work. He pointed at the authorization Ethan had produced at Bond and called it proof she delegated transfers. He said the bank IP data was inconclusive and asked the court to proceed on the charges as filed. Marisol stood without dramatics. Your Honor, the state is presenting a story built on missing data. She placed the preservation order on the lectern, then set down Denise's declaration about deliberate deletion. The company's audit tables were purged after this order was served. The deletion window matches Mr. Hale's alleged absence. The state can't benefit from spoliation and call it certainty. The prosecutor objected. Marisol kept going, turning a page and sliding the bank audit trail forward. This login did not come from Ms. Ronan's work device. This trusted device is Mac OS and Safari. This IP resolves to a residential block tied to Mr. Hale's internet service, not the company network. She looked at the judge, then at the prosecutor. And today we have the missing piece explaining how the records were made to point at her. The bailiff opened the side door and a man walked in holding a subpoena. Saoirse recognized him from the parking deck in the coffee shop, but here he looked younger, like he hadn't slept. Marisol spoke first. Noah Carver, also known as Knox, is here under subpoena and under a cooperation agreement. The prosecutor shifted, irritated, then nodded to the judge. Noah took the stand, swore in, and kept his hands on the rail as if he didn't trust himself with gestures. State your occupation, the prosecutor said. I do contract technical work, Noah answered. What kind of technical work? Remote access, recovery, sometimes cleanup. Marisol's voice cut in. Did Ethan Hale hire you to move money and erase traces? Noah exhaled once. Yes. A ripple moved through the benches. Saoirse didn't turn. She watched Ethan. Saoirse kept her eyes on Marisol. Ethan sat 2 rows back in a suit he wore to church, jaw locked, eyes fixed on Noah like the stare could rewrite the day. Marisol lifted the sealed bag. Do you recognize what's in this evidence package? Yes, Noah said. Session logs. Who created them? I did, Noah said. Automatically. Every time I open a remote session, it records commands, timestamps, the controlling device, and IP addresses. Why keep them? Noah's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Clients forget you exist until they need someone to blame. Marisol unsealed the bag with the bailiff watching and handed the printout to Noah. Read the entry for March 12th, 9:18 p.m. Noah scanned. Command: Initiate transfer. User message: Make it look like her login. Source IP: Hale Residence Network. Controlling device fingerprint: Ethan Hale's MacBook. The prosecutor stood abruptly. Objection! Foundation for device attribution. Denise rose from the back row. Your Honor, may the witness explain the fingerprinting method? The judge nodded once. Noah described the remote tool's device signature. Denise confirmed it matched Ethan's hardware ID from the admin reset request. Marisol asked one more question. Did you delete company logs at Ethan Hale's request? Yes, Noah said. He demanded it after the police contacted the company. What did you delete? Audit tables and access records that would show the transfers. Ethan leaned forward, unable to stay silent. That's a lie, he snapped. The judge's gavel hit once. Mr. Hale, you will not speak. Ethan kept talking anyway, words spilling. She gave me the codes. She asked me to help. Enough, the judge said. Bailiff. 2 officers stepped toward Ethan. One took his wrist while the other reached for cuffs. Metal clicked, and Ethan's face shifted from outrage to panic. Saoirse leaned toward Marisol and spoke so only she could hear. At least today, they got the right person. Reporters surged in the hallway as the judge recessed. Marisol moved first, planting herself between Saoirse and the microphones. No comment, she said. A court clerk called from the doorway. Miss Ronan, we need you for bond termination paperwork. Saoirse shifted her folder under her arm and followed the clerk while Marisol held a hand up to the crowd, keeping them back as Saoirse stepped forward. By late afternoon, the clerk slid a final form across the counter and pointed to the line that ended Saoirse Ronan's bond conditions. Sign here. Saoirse signed, then watched a deputy kneel and unclip the ankle monitor without ceremony. The strap left a pale groove, nothing more. Marisol Vega took the paperwork, checked the stamp, and handed Saoirse a separate order: supervised retrieval of personal property from the marital home. 30 minutes, Marisol said. Bring a list. Saoirse nodded, folded the order, and walked out with her folders tucked under one arm. She didn't call Ethan and didn't ask permission. The deputy met her at the curb in front of the house and checked the order as if it were a parking ticket. Ethan Hale opened the door after the first knock, already holding a polite smile. I'll stay out of the way, he said. Do, Marisol replied, and Ethan's smile thinned. Saoirse walked straight to the office nook where bills used to pile up. She opened drawers, pulled tax folders, and dropped them into a cardboard box. In the kitchen, she grabbed her mug, not because it mattered, but because it was hers. The deputy watched the clock closely. In the bedroom closet, she found the shoebox of cables she'd searched before, now shoved behind Ethan's winter coats. Her old calculator sat on top, the cheap kind with a cracked corner. Next to it was the reconciliation notebook she'd carried to work every month, pages filled with dates, initials, and tiny check marks. She didn't flip through it. She set it into the box, then taped the lid. Ethan hovered in the hallway. That won't help you, he said. It's not for you, Saoirse answered. The deputy cleared his throat and pointed at his watch. Time was up. He nodded. They loaded the box into Marisol's trunk and drove to a small storage facility off Independence Boulevard. The clerk behind the counter looked at the paperwork, then at Saoirse's single box and duffel. Moving? She asked. Temporarily, Saoirse said. From where to where? From a whole system, Saoirse replied, and the clerk blinked, then handed over a key. Saoirse rolled the unit door up, set the box on the concrete, and wrote an inventory on the lid. Taxes, electronics, notebook, receipts. No memories, just categories. Marisol photographed the lock and saved the timestamp. Then she texted Denise the chain number. From storage, they went to the short-term rental where Saoirse had been sleeping and counting every dollar. She sat at the table with the burner phone and her own phone and changed every password she could reach: bank login, email, payroll app, cloud storage, even the grocery account Ethan used to help with. Each change got a new passphrase and a two-factor method that went only to her device. Marisol watched, writing a list for discovery. Don't reuse anything, Marisol said. I won't, Saoirse said, and wrote recovery codes on paper, not a screen. She logged out everywhere, then restarted. The next morning, Marisol drove her to a credit union and waited in the lobby while Saoirse handled the counter. She presented her ID, the court paperwork, and a pay stub from before the suspension. The banker asked if she wanted a joint account. No, Saoirse said, just mine. She opened checking and savings, set alerts for every transaction, and ordered a new debit card with her mailing address. When the banker offered overdraft coverage for convenience, Saoirse declined. She signed the signature card, then tucked the account number into her folder like evidence. She left. They could ask why. That afternoon, she toured a small one-bedroom and signed the lease in her own name. The property manager ran her credit and raised an eyebrow at the freeze. Saoirse handed over Marisol's letter and the court notice ending bond. Short term is fine, the manager said. Saoirse paid the deposit with her new card and set rent as an automatic transfer she could stop. Back at the rental, she enabled two-factor on the new email Marisol created for the case and forwarded only what mattered. Marisol called. Keep receipts, she said. Always, Saoirse replied. She filed the lease with papers. 2 days later, after another round of document scans, Saoirse returned to the storage unit with a marker and tape. She wrote her name on the last box, added a date, and pressed the label flat. Marisol's paralegal snapped a photo for the file and sealed the key in an evidence envelope. Saoirse pulled the unit door down and turned the lock until it clicked. She walked toward her car when her phone lit with a call from HR. The screen showed the company number, and her thumb hovered over accept as she stepped off the curb without slowing down. Ms. Ronan? It's Dana from Human Resources. We need you to come in today. Your attorney can be present. It's about your status. Marisol met her in the lobby 10 minutes later, carrying a folder and a spare pen. No side conversations. They put it on paper or it doesn't exist. They rode the elevator to the same small conference room where the cuffs had started. HR had arranged water bottles like a peace offering. Dana didn't sit until Marisol did. On behalf of the company, we want to correct the record. Dana slid a letter across the table, signed by the CEO and the board. It stated that the internal investigation had found Saoirse was not responsible for the transfers. It offered back pay for the suspension period and a settlement for legal expenses. Dana kept her eyes on the page as she spoke. We're very sorry. Saoirse read every line, then turned the letter over to check for attachments. Marisol asked for a clause confirming the company would cooperate with any further criminal investigation. Dana nodded and added it in pen, initialing the margin. I'm sorry too, but I prefer paperwork to words. Dana's mouth tightened, then she stamped the copy for Saoirse's file. An email went out while they were still in the room. Dana read it aloud because she knew the wording mattered. After review of forensic evidence, we have determined Ms. Ronan did not misappropriate company funds. Her employment record has been corrected, and we apologize for the harm caused. No one clapped. A manager on speakerphone cleared his throat and said, Understood, then disconnected. When Saoirse and Marisol walked through the hallway, conversations paused and restarted behind them. One woman from payroll stared at her monitor like it was suddenly urgent. A man Saoirse had trained nodded once, fast, and kept moving. Saoirse didn't stop anyone to collect apologies. She retrieved her old nameplate from a drawer in HR, still wrapped in tissue. Dana cleared her throat and slid another packet forward. Benefits reinstatement, a corrected W-2, and a release that included a confidentiality clause. Marisol crossed out 2 paragraphs, wrote in replacement language, and pushed it back. You're not buying her silence. Dana's pen hovered. Then she initialed Marisol's edits. Your laptop is still with IT. We imaged it for law enforcement. Then preserve the image and give her her personal files. An IT supervisor brought a small box with Saoirse's desk items, a stapler, a framed photo from a holiday party, and the spare calculator she'd kept for interns. He avoided her eyes, then spoke to Marisol instead. We didn't know. Saoirse lifted the calculator, turned it over, and set it back. You knew enough to take my computer. The supervisor swallowed. That was management. In the hallway, a coworker she used to eat lunch with approached, phone in hand like a shield. I wanted to check on you. I told them I thought it was weird. Saoirse didn't ask what she'd told them last week. If anyone calls you about me, send them to my lawyer. The woman nodded too fast and stepped away. Dana offered to escort Saoirse to her desk to clear out anything remaining. Saoirse shook her head and handed over a written list instead. Box it and ship it. Nothing goes missing twice. Marisol nodded and Dana didn't argue, just typed the request into her system with hands. Dana wrote a note, then handed Saoirse a temporary visitor badge. Saoirse didn't clip it on. She held it between 2 fingers until Marisol took it and dropped it into her folder. From the office, they went straight to the bank branch that had frozen her accounts. The fraud specialist recognized Marisol and didn't pretend to be friendly. We've lifted the alert. Your access is restored, pending final review. He pushed a stack of forms across the desk. Saoirse read the fine print, verified the account numbers, and signed only where the ink boxes matched the text. Marisol requested written confirmation that the bank would preserve logs and cooperate with subpoenas. The specialist printed a letter and stamped it without a sigh. Outside, Saoirse tucked the documents into her bag and held the nameplate in her other hand. It felt lighter than the plastic badge, and heavier than it should have. Marisol pointed toward the sidewalk. Go home, eat something, and email me a photo of every page you signed today. Saoirse nodded, already pulling her keys out, and her phone buzzed with a new text. It was from Marisol's calendar link labeled Sentencing, Ethan Hale. The sentencing hearing for Ethan Hale took less time than the bond hearing that had put a tracker on Saoirse's ankle. She sat behind Marisol Vega, hands folded, and watched Ethan stand at the defense table with a new lawyer and a face that kept trying to look injured. The judge didn't ask Saoirse how she felt. He didn't need to. The record was already written in logs, subpoenas, and sworn statements. The prosecutor read the charges Ethan had now taken: fraud, obstruction, and conspiracy. Marisol leaned toward Saoirse once. "Stay still. Let the paper do it." When the judge asked if there was anything further, Marisol stood with one sheet. "Your Honor, we request the court confirm Ms. Ronan's name is cleared in the docket, and the prior conditions are terminated as moot." The judge nodded, glanced at the clerk, and spoke like he'd been waiting to say it. "Granted." Ms. Ronan is not the perpetrator in this matter. The clerk stamped a page and slid it into Marisol's folder. Ethan turned his head, searching for Saoirse's eyes, but Marisol shifted one step and blocked the line. 2 deputies escorted him out through the side door. The cuffs weren't dramatic. They were functional. Outside the courthouse, Marisol handed Saoirse the stamped confirmation and a second page for her files. "Keep copies, scan them, and don't store them anywhere you didn't choose." Saoirse nodded and tucked the papers into a plain envelope, the kind she used for tax receipts. She didn't linger. She walked to her car, started it, and drove to a coffee shop that opened early and didn't ask questions. The barista slid a paper cup across the counter. "Name?" "Saoirse," she said. The barista wrote it correctly, which felt like a small luxury. Her phone buzzed once with an email from an old coworker. Marcus, the one who had pivoted away at the ATM. The subject line read, "Files you asked about." The message was short. "I kept these because the whole thing felt off. Thought you should have them." Attached was a zipped folder with a few exported reports he'd saved before IT shut everything down. The weekly cash forecast, the vendor reconciliation summary, and a screenshot showing Ethan requesting a permissions change for continuity. Saoirse forwarded it to Marisol without adding commentary, then replied to Marcus with one sentence. "Thank you for not deleting what you didn't understand." When she got back to her building, the neighbor across the hall stepped out with a trash bag and paused. He had watched the patrol car pull up weeks earlier. He hadn't waved then. Today he didn't apologize. He just nodded once, slow, and held the door while Saoirse carried in a cardboard box of office leftovers HR had shipped. The nod wasn't forgiveness. It was recognition that the story had changed. Saoirse's new job started the next Monday at a mid-sized accounting firm on the south side of Charlotte, a place with glass doors and a receptionist who asked for ID like it was normal, not personal. Marisol had negotiated the last details with the company settlement so Saoirse wouldn't need Ethan's signature on anything. The firm's managing partner had met her once, shook her hand, and kept the conversation on skills, not scandal. On her first morning, HR gave her a badge with her name printed cleanly and a temporary password on a sticky note. "You'll change it after your first login," the HR rep said. "We require 2-factor." "Perfect," Saoirse said. She walked down the hallway without anyone flanking her. No one held her elbow. No one watched her hands. People looked up, said hello, and went back to work. Because they had work. At her desk, a laptop waited with a new email address and a list of onboarding tasks. Saoirse set her bag down, arranged her notebook and pen, and opened the system portal. The screen asked for the temporary password, then prompted her to create a new one. She typed slowly, not because she was nervous, but because she was done being convenient. She generated a passphrase she wouldn't say out loud to anyone and stored the recovery codes on paper, folded into her wallet. A coworker stopped by with a smile and a spare monitor cable. "IT said you might need this," he said. "Thanks," Saoirse replied. "And I'm not sharing logins," she added, matter of fact. He blinked once, then nodded like she'd told him she preferred black coffee. "Fair," he said. "Honestly, same." The portal refreshed. A simple word appeared at the top. "Welcome." Saoirse stared at it for a second, then let out a short breath that wasn't relief so much as permission. This time, only one person knows the password, she said. She clicked through the last setup screen, confirmed her two-factor device, and opened the accounting dashboard. The layout was different, the buttons in new places, but the logic was familiar. Numbers still behaved, they just needed boundaries. Saoirse placed her phone face down, pulled her chair in, and opened a blank reconciliation template. She inhaled once, small and controlled, then set her fingers on the keys and started typing the first line of her new workday.